He won by a landslide, but not everybody believes the election was free or fair. Anger erupts across Belarus following a victory many expected, but some claim was rigged. The president gains another term, but at what political cost? I'm Ali Aslan, and today's newsmaker is Alexander Lukashenko. For a man who's frequently called Europe's last dictator, events leading up to Belarus presidential election should have come as no surprise. He barred opposition candidates from running, arrested opposition supporters, and even accused some of conspiring with Russian mercenaries to stage an uprising. Internet access was blocked and election monitoring restricted. Lukashenko has now officially won 6 elections in a row. But, as Natalie Pahonen reports, the opposition to his rule seems more vocal than ever.
Election night in Minsk. Hours after Belarus's incumbent president Alexander Lukashenko was declared victor, the disbelief and outrage from many voters was palpable. The official figures show Lukashenko secured 80% of the ballots, and his main rival, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, winning just under 10%. Those numbers don't add up for opposition supporters. In the capital and around the country, they let authorities know it. The Interior Ministry says 3,000 people were detained nationwide for taking part in what it calls unauthorized gatherings. Lukashenko has led Belarus since 1994, winning every election with a landslide. His 6th time on the ballot was never expected to end with any other outcome. In this former Soviet country, the state-run institutions remain loyal to the president. But this year, the public mood appears to have been turning against the strongman. Promises of economic prosperity for the people haven't materialized. And like other nations, Belarus hasn't escaped the coronavirus pandemic. Lukashenko originally dismissed it. To date, nearly 70,000 Belarusians have tested positive for COVID-19, including Lukashenko himself. It's with that backdrop that an unlikely political voice emerged in the form of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. The former teacher turned stay-at-home mother decided to run after her husband, a popular blogger, was first barred from campaigning and later jailed. Her key political promise: to run fresh elections with all candidates. It's one of the largest shows of political dissent against the president in his quarter century in office. Ahead of voting, Lukashenko said the opposition didn't amount to anything, but he still had this warning.
Если вы будете бороться против страны, если вы будете пытаться даже в мельчайших каких-то вещах ввергнуть страну и в хаос и дестабилизировать, вы получите мгновенный от меня ответ.
Government critics have accused the authorities of vote rigging. Tikhanovskaya has rejected the results and has called for a peaceful transfer of power.
I think that we've already won because we overcame our fear. We overcame our indifference to politics. We overcame our apathy and indifference. Such victories are more important than all the other victories. These are very important victories in the life of every person.
Lukashenko says the protesters on Sunday night were sheep being directed from abroad, and he won't allow his country to be ripped apart by instability. But the protests show there is discontent, and that won't go away even if he governs with an iron grip. Natalie Pahonen, The Newsmakers.
To discuss this, let's go to our panel. Joining us from Warsaw is former Belarusian politician Andrei Sannikov. He ran for president against Lukashenko in 2010 and was jailed for protesting after the election. Political analyst Maria Lipman is in Moscow. She's a senior associate at the Institute for European, Russian and Eurasian Studies. And in Munich, we have Daniel Krutzinna. He was an advisor to former Belarusian Prime Minister Syarhey. Rumors. Andrei Sannikov, President Lukashenko claims victory once more. This would be his 6th consecutive election victory with no less than 80% of the vote this time. The opposition, however, is very much disputing this result. Any doubt on your mind that this vote was not rigged?
No, there is no doubt. First of all, it's not his 6th term, it's his 7th term, because he extended his term in 1996 when he organized this illegal referendum and changed the constitution, and then he served for 7 years instead of 5 years. So we can consider it his 7th term. No, there is no doubt that he rigged the election, and I'm still puzzled that 26 years Lukashenko is in power. At least 24 years he is a dictator and he usurped the power in Belarus, and you are still speaking about him winning the election or landslide victory. There was no election after 1994, so he had no chance to win any election. He would not stand any chance to win any election. If we speak about landslide victory and winning the election, it was Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who clearly won the election by 90%, as we see from the exit polls from abroad, unfortunately, because we don't have exit polls in Belarus.
Maria Lipman, Andrei Sannikov is no way that this vote was not rigged. As a matter of fact, we should no longer speak of free and fair elections, shouldn't speak and use terminology such as landslide victories. What's your take?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the election was rigged. To begin with, there is no poll. There is no independent polling in Belarus. Last independent poll taken was in April. And at that point in time, Lukashenko's approval rating was around 24%. Since then, there haven't been any independent polling published. So we should proceed from those numbers, and there is a good reason to suggest that as a result of a powerful opposition campaign, this rating is probably even lower now. There is nothing but the official results, and the official results indeed indicate to a landslide, but there is no reason to trust this result. Also, exit polls that were done by the officials also showed huge support for Lukashenko. However, no independent exit polls were conducted. So when you don't have such indispensable elements of a democratic election, such as polling of public opinion or independent observation or independent exit poll, you can hardly call the result credible. And the result that was reported, 80% to Lukashenko and just 10% to Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, is absolutely not credible.
Daniel, you're certainly no stranger to Belarusian politics. Lukashenko has been in power since 1994. This, of course, is making things more difficult, considering the fact that no international observers were on hand to evaluate what was going on the ground.
Yes, that's true. There were no OEC observers invited this time, in opposed to, for example, the elections in 2010. I think, for not painting this too much black and white, that Lukashenko, at the beginning of his reign, he was really popular. He had the support of the people. In 1994, he became president through a democratic process and was quite successful in the first part of his reign, basically keeping the country together, preventing an oligarchization of the economy like it happened in Russia, and basically preserving the good sides of the Soviet system. But especially in the last 10 years, I would say that he was not very successful in economic terms. Real salaries stopped growing or were actually decreasing. And now in this, since the beginning of the year, he made a few very important mistakes in my point of view. The first is he totally wrong estimated the corona crisis, and so people were left aside, especially his traditional public, like the older generation, the people working in state factories and so on. Then he was not ready for having really strong oppositionary candidates that are not paid by the West or somebody else, but really who are financed from within the country, and there's initiative within the country. Then I think social media plays a very key role that basically the regime was not ready for to deal with. And as a result, you really have now a massive movement that is questioning the results as they were stated officially.
Indeed, Andrei, we could speak with Lukashenko winning yet another election, or whatever term you want to use, as business as usual. But it is different this time, isn't it? Many people inside of Belarus have gone on the street last night, and several thousands have been detained. What is different this time? Why are Belarusians not laying low, not taking this results for granted, and not accepting it as Lukashenko probably would have hoped for?
Yes, it's absolutely different. I think that the whole country have risen against Lukashenko. The people have spoken, the people have risen. And the reason for this is the attitude, I think the last straw for this was the attitude of Lukashenko towards COVID-19, because he openly showed how he despised the people. It's not only that he denied the graveness of the pandemic, but it's how he treated people. He blamed them for dying from COVID-19. He started to expose them on purpose, expose them to the lethal danger by organizing this military parade, by pushing people to go to churches, even when the Moscow Patriarchy, the Orthodox Church, called on people not to go there, by organizing this subotnik, as it is called, the free of charge labor on Saturday, by not allowing to close down the schools. So people started to help themselves. They started to organize. They started to help the medical profession. They started to buy for their own money medical supplies. They started to keep their children at home without sending them to school. And they realized that they don't need state. They don't need Lukashenko, who really did show a lot of contempt towards people. They could easily help themselves without any government, such government as Lukashenko. And he continued to humiliate the people, and he managed to humiliate the whole people of Belarus. Everybody felt offended by Lukashenko, even, I'm sure, even his inner circle. And then that's why people revolted. And I think that the people will not be stifled as before.
Yeah, certainly the mishandling of the coronavirus crisis. He advised his citizens to drink vodka and use saunas to fight the virus. That certainly could not have helped his case. But Maria, if we're looking at the protests now in Belarus, what chances do they have of succeeding? How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, it is, of course, very hard to predict. However, as we know from the experience of other countries, a popular uprising, and this is what we are witnessing today in Belarus, is not enough for a dictatorial regime to fall. What it takes usually is a split of the elites, and first and foremost, the elites such as the police, such as riot police, other forms of other kinds of law enforcement, state security. And so far, we've seen that those forces, those institutions in Belarus are loyal to the president. And this seems to be the only source of his power now. He claims victory that he has not won. He announced not only that he won overwhelmingly today, but he also said that the election was a holiday, as he put it. And he said people who were in the streets at night wanted to damage that holiday for the people, trying to dismiss them and to dismiss their significance. We know for a fact that he is not popular in the country these days, and use of force and use of brutal force, as we saw last night, and as I'm afraid we will see in the forthcoming days, seems to be his main resource. Such leaders such as Lukashenko, do not yield power. They cling on to power at any cost as long as they can. I'm not sure how this as long will last in the case of Belarus, but I do not think that that Lukashenko may actually step down on his own.
Daniel, any chance that Lukashenko is impressed by the protests going on in his country right now?
My impression is that he actually is impressed, and he's actually trying to react to the concerns. For example, when he came to Brest for the first time since very long, he really met with oppositionary leaders who were against a big factory for recycling of batteries that is going to be built in Brest. So he's trying to react, but the question is if he sort of missed the train. And with this massive crackdowns now, of course, people are getting more and more angry. But a prediction of the regime to go or not, I think is really difficult also because Belarus is in this very difficult geopolitical situation. And what you see from today's statements, they are very typical. So you basically have Western countries doubting in the rightfulness of the election results, European Union, US, most Western countries, but at the same time already China, Russia, Kazakhstan, other states in Eastern Europe congratulating Lukashenko for victory. And also there was a statement being made by the press speaker of Putin saying that Russia will counter any intervention of the West into the political processes inside Belarus. So Russia issued a warning, and I think so. Even if protests become very massive, the question is how Russia will behave in that situation.
Indeed, a very crucial and difficult question to predict, Andrei. How is Russia, how is Vladimir Putin going to react in a situation like this? As Daniel said, he has already officially congratulated Lukashenko on his election victory. How do you see Moscow, do you see Vladimir Putin changing stance here in the long run?
As for congratulations of Lukashenko, you know, Lukashenko is indicator of dictatorship. So those who congratulated him fall into this category. And it's for sure. And everybody who congratulates him, first of all, they do understand very well what was going on during the so-called elections. And then they are defending their own dictatorship. So it's nothing in these congratulations. How Moscow will react, I don't know. Frankly, I don't care how Moscow will react, because what I do care is that we have a chance of to change the life in Belarus, that we have a window of opportunity opened by Belarusian people. And when I hear the geopolitics from people from the West, I do understand that they don't want to defend their own values. Because people of Belarus are defending European values. They're defending, as Gorbachev said, common human values in Belarus, and they're fighting for it. And they're suffering for it. And the West is discussing the real politics and geopolitical factor of Belarus. No, it's not about geopolitical fact. It's about freedom. It's about how solidarity in Poland fought and was assisted, strongly assisted, resolutely assisted by the West. It's about the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia that was supported by the West, by democratic countries, I would say, not only the Western countries, but I mean Western European. So Russia, we know how it might behave, but there is also one thing that we hear from time to time from Kremlin, that there are more than one tower in Kremlin, and these towers are sometimes in conflict with each other. And what I heard from my friends from Moscow, that not everybody was happy with Lukashenko, to say the least, and they might understand that the value of Belarus and Belarusian people attitude towards Russia might be much bigger price than to support Lukashenko, the dictator who is annoying everybody, including Putin.
Maria, Andrei is issuing and voicing disappointment over the lack of action on the part of the West or Europe in particular. Now, Germany has said that it has very strong doubts about the election results, and Poland has called for an emergency summit, EU summit even, to discuss Belarus. What do you expect from Europe at a time like this?
Well, I think Russia is still the main player here, and Russia is the only one that can interfere and bring its own force in support of Lukashenko. I'm not sure Russia is willing to do that. That would be a high cost to pay. Russia would be, I think, much happier to see Lukashenko somehow holding on to power and weakened by his very low public support now, because that would make him more pliable and more responsive to the Kremlin's control. However, using force, sending police or what have you to help Lukashenko handle his uprising would come at a very high cost. Belarusian people are not anti-Russian, unlike Ukraine, for instance, where a large portion of the population has strong anti-Russian feelings. This is not true in Belarus. They regard Russians as neighbors, as good neighbors, as friends. If Russia comes with use of force, that would aggravate and antagonize people in Belarus even more and call for even more violence. So this would be, I think, not a desired policy for Russia, and Russia will try to refrain from it, but I would not fully rule it out.
So you're saying that Lukashenko's fate is first and foremost decided and determined by Moscow?
Yes, I would say so. There are very strong ties, economic ties and other ties. After all, we have this union state, Russia and Belarus. This does not mean that we are the same country, but ties are close, and Belarus depends on Russia economically. And this dependence has not grown smaller. And actually, Putin will use every opportunity to harness, to take Lukashenko under control even more.
So Daniel,
seeing how he's weakened.
So Daniel, Europe protesting at this particular point really has no effect or impact, if I'm reading Maria correctly. Would you agree?
As an economist, I wouldn't completely agree to that. Actually, Belarus in the last years was quite successful in refinancing part of its debt internationally through Eurobonds. If now ties with the West completely broke and there would be a new round of sanctions coming, this would for sure come at high economic costs. And Russia already indicated that they are not any longer ready to fully step in and support Belarus in this massive economic crisis that will come due to different reasons, due to the coronavirus, due to low oil prices, still very high dependence on Russian markets, and so on. So basically, I think the West actually has economic lever on the country, but in terms of what was stated politically, if a country would, I don't think that the West would become active in a sense of sending whatever direct support to the opposition. They have never done that in the past.
Andrei, how is this going to play out? Obviously, you ran for office yourself. You're very experienced, but you're also quite frustrated. I can feel it. I can sense it. Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic that this is going to take a happy ending turn here at the end of the day?
Yes, I am optimistic, but we need support from international community. I'm really tired of hearing this hypocrisy about sanctions and hurting the people. The only factor that hurting people in Belarus is Lukashenko himself. He is enriching himself. He has 17 or 18 residences. He lives in luxury. And he doesn't care about economy. He only cares about his money, his power to steal more money from the people. And so, yes, I do think that sanctions are warranted. And they were warranted a month ago, or even more than a month ago, because we have reliable information that people, the opposition leaders, the opposition political activists are being tortured in prison, and Belarus is part of the International Convention Against Torture. It warrants strong sanctions on behalf of the European Union. But I'm very optimistic because I never saw such an upbeat mood in Belarus, such a resoluteness to resist this obsolete regime, such hatred towards Lukashenko himself, because his nickname Sasha 3% is not well deserved, and he really is not doesn't have more support than 3%. And when people say that there is some independent polling, there is no independent polling in Belarus. It's impossible. And I think that the major polling companies like Gallup, they left Belarus in the 90s because they do not work in the situation of dictatorship.
Right, but I understand you that the people going on the street and protesting gives you hope. Certainly a story that is still unfolding. Andrei, Maria, Daniel, unfortunately we have to leave it at there. And this wraps up another edition of Newsmakers. Thank you out there for watching, and so hope to see you again next time.